There's a moment when you stop looking for an answer. Not because you found it, not because something suddenly became clear, but because you no longer have the strength to return to the same place and ask the same question again. Before that, silence had weight. It wasn't just the absence of words. It was a space where you tried to find meaning. Every pause carried something. Every unanswered question led to another one. You would look at your phone a little longer than necessary, go back through conversations, search for something between the lines that may have never been there, and it always felt like the next moment would be different, that the next message would bring clarity, that the next conversation would explain everything that had been left unfinished, that something would finally shift from that place where nothing ever fully arrives. But it didn't. The silence stayed the same, no matter how much you tried to understand it. And slowly, without a clear moment, without a decision you can point to, something inside you begins to change. You don't notice it immediately. One day you realize you didn't check your phone the same way. You didn't think about what something might mean. You didn't try to build a complete story out of incomplete pieces. And it doesn't feel like relief at first. It feels like exhaustion. A quiet, deep exhaustion that doesn't come from one moment, but from repetition. From returning to the same question that never gets answered. From trying to understand something that constantly slips away. And then you begin to let go. Not of the person, not even of the feeling, but of the need for everything to make sense. You begin to accept that some things won't be explained, that some conversations will never happen, that some questions remain unanswered, and this doesn't come as a decision. It comes as the absence of the need to ask again. Silence begins to feel different. It's no longer something you need to fix. It's no longer something you need to fill. You don't try to break it with words that won't return. You simply let it be. And there is something in that which doesn't look like what you expected. It doesn't look like closure. It doesn't look like understanding. It doesn't look like that moment where everything finally makes sense. It feels more like the end of a struggle, as if you stopped trying to take something from a space that never gave anything back, and then something very quiet appears. Not happiness, not even relief in the way you imagined, but a kind of peace that has no explanation. A peace that doesn't come from answers, but from no longer needing them. You begin to notice how your relationship with everything changes. You don't return to the same question. You don't analyze every detail. You don't try to understand what's hidden behind the silence. It's as if you stopped entering a space that always brought you back to the beginning. And in that absence of effort, something starts to settle, not on the outside. On the outside, everything may still look the same people, the same connection, the same silence. But inside, you are no longer reacting in the same way. Silence no longer carries the same weight. Not because it changed, but because you moved away from the place where it had power over you. And then you understand something very quietly. Peace doesn't come when you receive an answer. Peace comes when you stop looking for it where it doesn't exist. And that doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you shut down. It doesn't mean what you felt loses its value. It only means you stopped giving energy to something that gives nothing back. And maybe for the first time, you are not trying to hold something at any cost. You are not pulling away dramatically. You are not closing doors with intensity. You are simply no longer standing in the same place with the same question. And that is a shift no one else sees. There is no conversation that marks it. No moment you can describe. But, because you no longer feel tension inside silence. Because you are no longer searching for meaning where there is none. Because for the first time, you can stay in that space without trying to change it. And then you begin to notice something else. You are no longer trying to speed things up. You are no longer trying to provoke a reaction. You are no longer waiting for a sign that something will change. And maybe this is the first time you allow things to be exactly what they are, without adding meaning, without interpreting, without hope trying to stretch something that has already stopped moving. And in that space, a different kind of clarity appears, Not the kind that comes from words, not the kind that comes from explanation, but the kind that comes when you stop denying what you already see, and then you realize something quietly. Silence was never the problem. The problem was believing that it needed to change. Now you know it doesn't. It can stay. And you can stay in it without needing to move it. And maybe this is the first time you are no longer searching. Not for a sign, not for confirmation, not for an answer. You are simply there, and that is enough. And maybe for the first time, you stop trying to explain it to yourself. You don't go back to the beginning to figure out where things changed. You don't search for the exact moment that would explain everything. You don't look for a sentence that would make it all make sense. It's as if you stopped looking for someone to blame. Not the other person, not yourself, not the situation. There is simply no longer a need for everything to have a clear reason. And this shift doesn't look big from the outside. No one sees it. No one knows when it happened. But inside, it feels different. As if you stopped holding on to something that kept pulling you back. As if you let go of something you had been trying to understand for a long time. And then you start noticing something else. You no longer feel the need to fill the silence. You don't start conversations just so something is said. You don't try to provoke a reaction. You don't try to maintain something that isn't moving. Silence no longer feels like a space that needs to be filled. It becomes a space that no longer asks anything from you. And that doesn't mean everything is resolved. It doesn't mean you got what you wanted. It doesn't mean everything is clear. But it means you stop turning towards something that gives you no answer. And there is something in that which doesn't feel like a victory. But it doesn't feel like a loss either. It feels more like balance. Like a place where you are no longer trying to move something that cannot be moved. And maybe this is the first time you don't feel the need to fix something that was never yours to fix. You don't try to understand the other person more than they are willing to be clear. You don't try to maintain a connection that no longer exists in the same way. You simply stop. And in that stopping, there is no drama. No big ending, no final sentence that closes everything. There is only silence. But now, it no longer asks anything from you.